It was supposed to be just another quiet morning at the lake cabin, the kind of day where the mist rose slowly off the still waters and the air smelled like pine and wood smoke. Marcus had chosen this place for its peace, for the way it allowed him to think without distraction. He had grown up in the city where every sound was a siren, every shadow a reminder to stay alert. Out here, by the lake, the silence itself was healing. He had poured everything he had into this little cabin, his savings, his sweat, his weekends of hammering and sanding, and now, after years of hard work, it was finally his sanctuary. What Marcus did not expect was for his peace to be shattered not by nature, but by his own neighbors, driven by prejudice and arrogance. That morning, as he sat at the wooden table reviewing some papers, he heard the crunch of tires on gravel outside. At first, he thought it might just be a fisherman parking nearby, or maybe a delivery truck gone astray. But then came the pounding, sharp, insistent knocks on his door that carried more authority than courtesy. Before Marcus could even respond, the door swung open and a woman's sharp voice cut through the air. "This property is not for you. Get out of this house," she barked, her manicured hand pointing at him as if she were a judge and jury rolled into one. Behind her stood two uniformed police officers, stiff-backed, arms folded across their chests, their expressions unreadable. To Marcus, it felt less like a visit and more like an ambush. The woman was none other than the president of the local Homeowners Association, notorious for her iron grip on the neighborhood and her constant meddling in everyone's affairs. She strode into the cabin as though it belonged to her, her white suit pristine against the rustic log walls. She carried a clipboard filled with papers, a symbol of the authority she so often wielded. Her words were loud, dripping with disdain, echoing in the wooden room. Marcus, still seated, turned his head slowly toward her. He wasn't surprised. He had expected some sort of confrontation eventually. From the moment he moved in, whispers had followed him, questions about how he afforded the property, suspicion about why he was there at all. But this wasn't just about paperwork or dues. This was about something deeper, uglier. What the HOA president did not realize, however, was that Marcus was not alone that morning. Sitting calmly in the armchair near the window, hands folded in a composed manner, was a man who carried with him far more authority than the HOA president and her clipboard combined. He wore a dark navy suit, his tie neatly knotted, his presence commanding without needing to raise his voice. This man was none other than the state attorney general, a longtime mentor and ally of Marcus, who had agreed to meet him at the cabin to discuss an upcoming initiative on housing discrimination and community reform. The irony was almost poetic. The HOA, in its rush to humiliate Marcus and assert dominance, had walked straight into a room where their actions could and would be scrutinized at the highest level of justice. The Attorney General remained silent at first, watching the scene unfold, his sharp eyes taking in every word, every gesture. The police officers shifted uncomfortably as the HOA president's accusations grew louder. She insisted Marcus did not belong, that the property wasn't in order, that she had the right to demand he leave immediately. Her words were laced with the assumption that no one would question her authority. But Marcus did not flinch. Instead, he leaned back slightly in his chair, his calmness a stark contrast to the storm in front of him. He knew something the HOA did not, that truth and law were on his side, and more importantly, that justice was sitting quietly across the room, waiting for the right moment to intervene. This confrontation was no longer just about a cabin. It was about power, prejudice, and the reckoning that was about to come. And as the fire crackled quietly in the stone hearth, the stage was set. The HOA president's finger remained pointed, her voice echoing like thunder. But what she didn't realize was that the storm she was unleashing was far bigger than she could control. Marcus looked at her, his eyes steady, his voice calm yet firm as he finally spoke. "You've made a mistake walking in here today." The officers glanced at one another, uncertain now, sensing that this was no ordinary dispute. The Attorney General leaned forward slightly, ready to break his silence. The tension was thick, and in that small cabin by the lake, The clash between arrogance and justice was only just beginning. The room fell silent for a brief moment after Marcus's words, and in that pause, the weight of the situation seemed to shift. The HOA president, still pointing, frowned in confusion, as though she couldn't comprehend that anyone would dare challenge her authority. "Excuse me?" she demanded, her tone shrill. "A mistake? The only mistake here is you thinking you can stay in a property you don't belong in. I have every right." She didn't finish her sentence because at that moment, the man in the navy suit finally stood. The Attorney General rose slowly, his movements deliberate, his expression unreadable but commanding. The officers' postures stiffened instantly. They recognized authority when they saw it. The HOA president faltered, her voice catching as she realized she didn't know who this man was. The Attorney General cleared his throat, his voice calm but cutting like steel. "Actually," he said, "the only mistake here is yours." The HOA president blinked rapidly, her confidence faltering. "And who exactly are you?" she snapped, trying to regain her footing. He reached into his jacket and produced a simple leather case, flipping it open to reveal his credentials. The golden seal of the state attorney general's office gleamed under the cabin light. The room seemed to shrink in that instant, the air heavier, the gravity of the situation undeniable. "I am the state attorney general," he declared firmly, "and I have been sitting here, listening, as you unlawfully barged into this man's private residence and attempted to intimidate him without cause." The silence that followed was deafening. The officers shifted uneasily, now clearly siding away from the HOA president, their eyes avoiding hers. She stammered, I didn't know. I was just trying to enforce the rules of the neighborhood." "Rules?" The Attorney General cut in sharply. "Your so-called rules do not give you the right to harass or discriminate. And let me be very clear. What I just witnessed amounts to harassment, trespassing, and potential abuse of authority. Do you realize the seriousness of what you've done?" The HOA president's face flushed red, her clipboard shaking slightly in her hand. She tried to glance at the officers for support, but they remained silent, their earlier confidence now gone. Marcus, meanwhile, sat quietly, watching the tables turn with a sense of vindication. For too long he had endured the whispers, the subtle stares, the unspoken accusations that he didn't belong. Now, in his own cabin, the truth had finally spoken louder than the lies. The Attorney General turned to Marcus then, his tone softening. "Mr. Daniels, you've shown remarkable patience in the face of unwarranted hostility. Rest assured, this incident will not be ignored. My office will be reviewing this matter thoroughly." His words were both reassurance and promise, carrying the weight of justice behind them. The HOA president attempted one last defense, her voice trembling. "This isn't what it looks like. I was just—" "No," the Attorney General interrupted firmly. "This is exactly what it looks like. And I suggest you leave this property immediately before you add criminal trespass to your list of mistakes." For the first time that morning, the HOA president was speechless. Her authority had been stripped away, her arrogance exposed. Without another word, she turned sharply, her heels clicking against the wooden floor as she stormed toward the door. The officers followed her, neither of them daring to meet Marcus's eyes. The sound of the door closing behind them was like the final note of a song. Sharp, final, and satisfying. Marcus let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The cabin felt lighter now, as though the walls themselves had been freed of the hostility that had invaded them. The Attorney General sat back down, his expression thoughtful. "This is why we fight, Marcus," he said quietly. "Because people in power think they can abuse it. And until they're reminded of the law, they'll keep trying." Marcus nodded. "I know. I just didn't think it would come right to my doorstep." The Attorney General gave him a faint smile. Justice has a way of finding its battlegrounds. Today it found yours. Outside, the lake shimmered under the rising sun, the water calm once again. Marcus felt a renewed sense of purpose, not just to protect his own space, but to stand as an example for others who might face the same battles. The confrontation had been ugly, but it had also been clarifying. He wasn't just a man in a cabin anymore. He was part of something larger, a fight for dignity and fairness that stretched far beyond the lake's edge. As the fire popped in the hearth and the quiet returned, Marcus and the Attorney General began to talk again, this time about strategies, reforms, and the work that lay ahead. The interruption had ended, but the mission was only beginning. And for Marcus, the cabin would never again just be a place of solitude. It was now a symbol of resistance, a reminder that even in the most unexpected places, justice could stand tall. If this story has moved you, inspired you, or even just opened your eyes to the power of truth, then don't just stop here. Hit that subscribe button and join this channel for more stories that matter. Every subscription helps spread awareness, every like helps fight ignorance, and every comment adds a voice to the chorus demanding fairness. Together, we can keep these stories alive and remind the world that no amount of arrogance can silence justice